Okay, from our studios this week in Los Angeles and Tampa, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip from Gantom Lighting Controls, and I'm joined by my delightful co-host, Scott Swinson of Scott Swinson Creative Development. On Green Tag, we look at the top news each week, and we explain why it matters for you. This week, we're recording early because I'm in Asia, in Hong Kong, for IAPA Asia. This week, it's going to be kind of a quick hits clip.
So it's a gazillion different topics in the next 30 minutes.
We'll start with Oogie Boogie Bash. They are switching a parade for a cavalcade. So people know Oogie Boogie Bash is the ticketed Halloween event that happens in California. This is California Adventure. And this year it has a record number of shows. They sell it every year, et cetera, et cetera. This year they are switching the parade, the Frightfully Fun parade, for a cavalcade, which is called the Madame Leota's Swinging Wake, a Haunted Mansion Street Party. And it says it brings frightful haunts to Disney California Adventure with a street party full of show-stopping moments and ghoulishly good times inspired by a beloved Haunted Mansion attraction and hosted by Madame Leota herself. And then apparently the Headless Horseman is still coming, but he's going to be just randomly wandering around the park at different times. I don't know. Okay, anyway, quick hate. So the backstory to this, which they didn't talk about, but I know from my neighbor, is basically that they're building the Coco ride. And so because because there's not enough room basically to run a parade because you have all the construction happening with Coco. And so I think this is their way to do that. But my question, Scott, is how does this change the calculus for value? Because a parade is a lot of entertainment. It's also a big crowd suck. A lot of people are waiting there for this thing that happens twice a night. And I think it's a really big part of the value proposition for this ticketed event, which is like $180 or, for 5 hours, something like that. So now we're changing it to a cavalcade. What do you think?
Well, let me first ask, when they do cavalcades, are they nonstop or are they specific showtimes?
It depends. So some of them are non-listed showtimes and we're not sure how this is going to be yet.
Yeah. So to me, this is actually, yes, there's a practical reason that they don't have a place to stage the parade. Yeah, I got it. Cavalcades are also cheaper than parades.
Yep.
I also think it targets a slightly different demographic. It's shading into the demographic of, I don't want to sit and watch the stuff. I want to do the stuff. I want to be not on the sidewalk. I want to be in the street. So I think this is a great, I think they're using a practical reasoning because they can't stage the floats. I think they're using a practical reason to do a great test market to see if cavalcades can replace parades. Because parades, if you think about it, theme parks do parades, especially Disney, do parades because that's what they've always done.
Yep.
But, as you and I saw for when we were judging some of the end of night spectacles, you don't need it. You don't need a parade to be, and it's more fun to have it happen all around you. And if you are doing a limited ticket, an expensive limited ticket, instead of having to wait for the parade, which takes you away from other things, if this is a nonstop cavalcade, if this is a nonstop dance party, then you can go in, experience it, and I'm assuming it takes place on Main Street, yes?
This is at California Adventure, but
California Adventure, okay.
It's going to take place on the parade route, yeah.
On the parade route. So you get to go in and experience it and do it in your time so that you can spend the rest of your limited time doing other stuff. So I think they're going to find that it's going to be popular once people get over the fact that there's no parade. I think the idea of a parade is more impactful than an actual parade.
Yeah.
And I think that changing people's mindset to go from a parade to a cavalcade is going to be harder than actually going from a parade to a cavalcade.
I agree with all of that, actually. I was thinking, I go to these Halloween events. Obviously, Halloween's my specialty. And the parades are, to me, and maybe I have a different lens, but they're just stressful. Because it's like, you're thinking, what time is it? How many people are there? Where am I going to watch it from? It's a lot of stress that's, baked into it. And then if you, especially with these events that are so expensive for a small amount of time, if you spend a half hour waiting or an hour waiting, then you've reduced
the value of your ticket.
That's right. And so the only thing I would push back on here, which is something that, my neighbor performed at Disney California Adventure for the Asian Pacific Islander month. Mm-hmm. And what they did was they hired different groups and they did 6 shows and 30-minute shows, lots of interactivity in the shows. Kids came up and danced. They taught them dances. It was a really good show. But But I was like, why didn't they add something else? So it's like right now, I think it's the perception is it's simply subtractive, or even if you're being generous, it's even. So you're losing a parade, but you're getting a cavalcade. Why didn't instead they say, we're going to do this cavalcade, and then we're going to do a few other character interactions, or simultaneous cavalcades, or you kind of just put other things to do, just random character interactions in other places to kind of make it seem like they're overall adding instead of.
Well, and it basically all comes down to how do they execute it. I mean, you could take parade floats, park them on the street, and do a cavalcade around them.
Yeah, that's true.
Leave them there the whole night.
Yeah, it's true.
All right, next.
Okay, next.
Moving on.
I think that's the same theory, actually. So it's interesting. So we got new details for the Magic of Disney Animation, which is coming to Disney's Hollywood Studios. We've been talking about this a lot, so I don't want to really. I'm not going to read all this because you all, I'm sure, already have seen the graphic. But if you look at the little graphic and you look at the different areas that they have, I'm thinking it's almost the same philosophy as what Scott exactly just said for this, which is that it's like, it's the opposite of going and having to wait in a long line for a big e-ticket ride, right? This is like, looking at this, it's like, it's a big building with a bunch of smaller rooms and different interactive activities, right? And so it seems like it's something more where you could casually stroll in and do one or two things and have a moment that's just you, or you drawing a character or whatever. You have more ability to do things and participate, and it's a less stress about a line, and it's all indoors and air conditioned. And I think it's a similar sort of thinking of, instead of everybody waiting for a parade, we're breaking it up into smaller interactions you can have individually with people because it's a swinging wake. This is the same idea, where instead of waiting for a big e-ticket that takes the same footprint, you can go in and you can draw animation over here, or you can take a photo with a hologram over here, or you can do this over here, or whatever. What do you think, Scott?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think basically it's the concept of the micro visit.
That's
it's
right.
The idea. It's the idea of I may not, and this is going to be hard for Americans of a certain age. There's a certain demographic that has a checklist mentality that says, well, if I'm going to buy the ticket, I got to see absolutely everything.
That's right.
That's going to take a little changing. I don't think that's as true with younger families. I think that, younger families recognize, especially with very precocious or very strong-willed children, they will say, I want to do this, and I want to do this again, and I want to stay here. I don't care about that. Let's do this. And I think this allows them to do that. It allows them to, if you do one thing, you have a micro visit, which is very satisfying. If you do two things, you have a slightly longer visit that is very satisfying. If you do it absolutely all of it, you've spent a little bit more time waiting around, hanging out, but you still feel satisfied. So it allows people to personalize their experience and right-size it based on their family's needs. So I think this is the right choice.
Yep. Okay. Next up, I'm not sure how much there is to this news, but basically,
this will be a short one. We can get through this pretty quick.
Basically, we've been tracking the new theme park that Universal is building in the UK, and they announced it's going to be called Universal United Kingdom Resort. I think that's it. Was there anything else in this? I
was going to say, great, next. No, yeah. I find it interesting that they are, because again, I heard the GM of Epic talk a little bit about it at a convention, well, now a couple weeks ago, and he basically, nobody seems to be talking about where they're positioning themselves in the area. They keep talking about how the area wants them there, and they feel that it's going to be a great thing for Universal, which I think it is. Yeah. But it's so Universal UK has announced its name, which is Universal United Kingdom Resort. Next.
Yay. Yeah, that's right. Well, we're going to keep on the Universal train because the Universal Kids theme park announced that they are opening July 1st, which is in just 2 weeks from when you all are listening to this. That's, of course, their new kid-centric theme park near Dallas, Texas, with rides themed to Shrek, SpongeBob, Trolls, Minions, Puss in Boots, and Jurassic World, plus a Gabby's Dollhouse area. And the two, I'm sure you all have already heard all about this. The only things I thought were interesting for this show is, one, in Universal's blog post, it kind of reads like a marketing pitch where they are making I would say a pretty strong connection between what we talked about at this point several weeks ago that Scott brought up, which is that a lot of the summer appeals are appealing to the child and the child's caregiver. And that seems to be the exact playbook that they are using here in their little blog post that is actually like a press release, in my opinion. And then secondly, also via Danny, my colleague at Attractions Magazine, she did some sleuthing on the website and she pointed out that actually they're not going to be open year round because there are quite a few dates that they are closed, which include November 3, 4, 10, 11, 17, 18, and November 26th, plus December 25th, and January 5th through 8th, 11th through 15th, and 19th through 31st. So basically, whole chunks of when families are actually available to go on vacation. Which I don't know, could be, maybe they'll change that, or maybe it's a staffing issue, or they're already projecting low attendance. I don't know. It's also was pointed out, now that we have pictures of some of the areas, that it doesn't, look as good as some of the new Universal properties, which I think is probably by design, because this is a kids park that's meant to be a local thing for one metro area. I don't think this is really meant actually to be a destination resort, but maybe I got that wrong.
It's not even part of the resort's team. It's actually part of the destinations and experiences team. So,
right.
And there's a lot of things that I find very interesting as far as how they're positioning it. First of all, let's look at the closure dates. Basically, this means they go to weekends in November and weekends in January.
Yep.
That's kind of what they're doing.
Yep.
So and maybe it's because November it's hard to know exactly when school's out, so they'll just do weekends in November. Yep. And they'll just do weekends in January, because again, I think January is the new shoulder season anyway. It used to be October, but that's not true anymore.
Yep.
So it looks like they're going to weekend only operation and extended weekends, yes, or expanded weekends, but they are still open at these, in January and November, but just not, they're open like January, they're open the 9th and 10th. And they're open the 16th through the 18th, so I think they're just going to limited operation. They are still considered a year-round park, I guess. But I also think it's very interesting that when you look at any of the promotional stuff, does it look like another existing park of a different brand to you? Does it resemble, I don't know, perhaps Legoland?
Yeah, that's what I was, a lot of people have been saying that too. Yeah. That is, it's very similar.
It looks like Legoland, which means that it's going after that same demographic.
Yep.
That's right. And it means that that's why there are Legolands in a lot of different locations, because they are more of I don't necessarily whether I'd call them local, but they're certainly regional. Right. And as things move forward, based on so many of the trends that we're seeing, having something that is local, if travel trends continue to be what they are, if gas prices continue to be what they are, right. If international travel continues to be what it is, low-end international travel, then this might be a nice piece for their portfolio. It might be a nice little test, and I think testing it in Texas makes tons of sense.
Yes, it does.
It's a good market to test this kind of thing, and even down to the logo for the park itself. If you look at the logo for the park itself, Universal is teeny tiny, but you know what's really big? Kids. So they make it very clear that this is a different experience. And again, the challenge, I think what they're doing is right. I think where they may fall short and where they may have some stumbling blocks, at least in my opinion, is convincing guests who are coming there that it is not Universal Orlando, that it is not Universal Hollywood. It is not any of the Universal Studios outside of the United States. It is its own kids resort. So it's more of the it's more like Universal with a high-end playground. And I think that brand confusion is going to be tough to overcome. Right. And I think it's going to get a lot of negative off the at the beginning, because it's just not enough. And I think we've seen that to a certain extent with
Horror Unleashed.
Yeah. Where they just haven't been able to quite tell people it's not really Horror Nights.
That's right.
It's its own thing. And I think that anytime you become so incredibly well known for something, it is very courageous to set out and try to continue to expand and to diversify your portfolio. But I think it's also in the long run a very wise move. So we'll see how it pans out for them.
Right. Yeah, that's good. I think the brand confusion definitely is going to hurt them, which is something that Legoland is not fighting against. And I would also point out too that Legoland's further along on this journey, where the Legoland Shanghai, like I've said this before, Legoland Shanghai is an incredible experience. It is the theming, it's very well. It's Legoland Shanghai is like made for kids, but something that adults you could see them wanting to go to just because it's so well produced. And I think that'll be also interesting to see with this is what it actually looks like. The execution, right? What is the execution on this? And
Yep. But I will say the pricing is, if nothing else, the pricing will explain to them, because it's only 42. I wrote it down here somewhere. Sorry, $54 for a ticket.
Yeah,
for a day ticket. So it's half price of one of the actual Universal parks, and a 2-day is $73.99, and a silver pass is $129.99, $164.99 with parking. So slightly more than a day ticket for Universal Orlando, especially if you get a multi-park ticket.
That's a good point.
So hopefully that pricing structure will open people's eyes so that it will help curb their expectations.
Yeah, good point. Okay, I guess we're going to stick with Universal for this next story as well, because there's been a lot of talk about how Universal Orlando has removed the Express Pass for Hagrid's. We were asked to talk about this a few weeks ago, and so sorry it took us weeks to get here. But I don't know. Scott is closer to this, might have a better take on it. But from what I understand, there were some unlimited Express passes, and people were kind of abusing them at the Hagrid's, and so instead of limiting the Express, they just removed it entirely from Hagrid's. And I'll read a little bit from Theme Park Insider that says the addition of Universal Express queue has been awful for fans waiting in the standby queue for Hagrid's, which is already one of the longest waits in the park due to the ride's popularity and its capacity. Standby times for the ride routinely stretch into multiple hours, which could not have been good for the guest satisfaction scores at Lands of Adventure. We'll pair that with a story from Tokyo Disney Resort. Tokyo Disney Resort is going to end their free priority pass service on August 31st. What that means that if you want a priority pass, you're going to have to purchase it. So basically, to explain for people, Japan still operated kind of in the way that we used to. I don't even know how long ago here. I only have vague memories of this, but remember when you used to go up to those little machines and you could put in your ticket and they would spit out and you didn't have to pay for it?
Right. They'd give you a virtual queue.
Yeah, there'll be some listeners who are like, "What are you talking about?" Like that. This used to be a thing, kids, where you would go to physical machines in the park. So Tokyo still had a system similar to that, where you would just scan your ticket and you could basically reserve for a virtual queue for rides, and you wouldn't have to pay anything for this service. And so they're discontinuing that and moving entirely over into Premier. They were using both. They were like, if you want to pay to just go whenever you want, here's a price. Or every 2 and plus hours or whatever, you can get a virtual queue reservation, or you could just stand in line. You could do any of those. And now they're limiting that. And also Hagrid's is doing the opposite by just taking away all Express.
Well, I think that the story, what you read for Hagrid's is actually part of the reason that that Hagrid's was the one selected to not. Hagrid's queue is I don't think they ever anticipated Hagrid's being as popular as it is. Hagrid's queue, and it's also, you have to keep in mind that it was also kind of built into, it was retrofit a little bit. Yep. It was kind of squeezed into what used to be something else. And so and again, I don't work there. This is not from any official source, but anecdotally from people that I've talked to, they said that the queuing at Hagrid's was so poor that the addition of the Lightning Lane basically just made the overall capacity less. So what it did was it impacted, because of the way things were laid out, it impacted the entire boarding experience negatively, which basically made the number of guests who can experience the attraction per hour less. Now, I can neither confirm nor deny this statement. This did not come from Universal. I do not have any insider information, but this is what I have been told by some people who actually were involved in the installation of the ride. And there's been concerns from the get-go, but I think that the intent of being afraid not to do a Lightning Lane superseded. It superseded the actual, oh my gosh, if we do a lightning lane, it's going to make it worse for everybody. So that's what I have been told. Now, whether that is accurate or not, like I said, I cannot say for certain, but it does make sense, because if you've ever been in that queue and you see where the lightning lane goes, and you see how it awkwardly boards, to just keep people pumping through that queue is going to be significantly easier and more efficient than the stop and go that was necessary for the lightning lane. We'll see. Like I said, don't know whether that's true or not, but it does make sense to me, and I have seen, and kind of ties into what Tokyo Disney is doing as well. If you've got, instead of 3 different ways of tracking how people come in, if you've only got 2, it's going to increase efficiency. Yes, there will be an additional revenue, bump. We get that because of people who were doing just the free virtual queue or reserving a time. But those would, well, since you weren't buying them, I don't know whether you can use sell out, but those would become not available later in the day as well.
Yeah.
I did that, honestly, the last time I was, or one of the times that I was in California, at Disney. So yeah, it's been a while. But so anyway, that's my take on the operational side of lightning lanes and priority pass queues and all that, because you kind of have to sometimes you have to look at the holistic picture. You have to look at the big picture and see, right, is this going to impact negatively more people?
Right.
So
I think that we don't know, again, we don't have any insight on the Tokyo thing, but I would hazard that both decisions are probably exactly what you're saying, which is improving the holistic experience, because that's just like, generally from the Japanese culture, it's probably more about what they're concerned with. And I did read a little bit from the Japan Times about some of the feedback from people saying that a lot of people were abusing the system somehow. But it's the same principle, right? Which is that queues were not classically designed to deal with these 2 types of, like, they work best, right, when it's just a single stream of people. It's more efficient. And so there are still going to be Premier, but the amount of people I think that pay for Premier is significantly lower than the virtual queue stuff. So it kind of should improve efficiencies. So.
I mean, a perfect example, if you've ever been to Florida and driven across I-4, those places that have 3 lanes merging onto I-4 versus 1 merge onto I-4, there's always a backup by the big ears. So, and that's why, because instead of just 1 lane smoothly coming on, you've got multiple lanes merging into each other and then merging onto I-4. Yeah. So it kind of makes sense if you think about it.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe, does this make sense? Does this next story make sense if you think about it? I don't know. So, so I think so. I was just trying to make a transition. So, Carousel of Progress. This is many weeks old, so I'm sure all of us are aware of it. But this Carousel of Progress, they're closing the ride in a few weeks on July 6th to install new scenes. And what they're going to do is, instead of portraying life in the 1900s, 20s, and 40s, it will shift 60 years. So it's going to be 1969, 85, and 2000. The original idea to time shift the experience so it is no farther away from us in the past as the original was from the audience at the New York's World Fair in 1964. So the reimagined experience will begin in the 1960s with Walt Disney himself actually introducing guests to the optimism of the World's Fair and the space race. Then the theater will rotate through an all-new 1980s sequence, a Y2K-inspired internet era, and a retro-futuristic off-planet finale designed to remain timeless for future generations. One of the biggest changes, of course, is going to be Walt Disney himself as an audio animatronic, and Disney said the new opening scene is inspired by Walt's 1964 television special Disneyland Goes to the World's Fair, where he introduced the audience to the original concept behind the Carousel of Progress. Scott, what do you think? I mean, I think on its surface, yeah, it's keeping the original intent of the ride, which is, keeping that story. And I actually think the introduction of the Walt animatronic, hopefully it's a better one than what we got at Disneyland. But with that awkward one, but hopefully it's better than that one. But I like
at least it'll look like him. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I want to hear what you take about this from a storytelling perspective.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I think this is going to be so cool because again, I loved Carousel of Progress. I thought it was.
I love it too.
Very,
It's one of my favorite rides, actually.
very nostalgic, really fun, really charming. But when you look at it now, the people who were seeing it in the 1960s were nostalgic about the 40s and even the 20s, depending on which generation of the family was there. Even the 1900s. But there's nobody who's going to be nostalgic about the 1900s because they're dead. So I think it's important to make it so that there's something that the audience can connect with.
Yep.
This is something that happened at TGI Fridays restaurants several years ago, quite a few years ago now. Because originally they used to decorate them with things from the 50s, 60s, and 70s because they opened in the 70s. Then they kept shifting decades so that the earliest decade got newer and newer and newer because they wanted to make certain that it had a sense of nostalgia. But the difference between nostalgia and history is point of view or frame of reference. So if you have no frame of reference for the 1900s, it's not nostalgic. It's just a history class.
Yeah.
So keep it nostalgic. Keep the emotion in the storytelling, because again, for me, 1969 will be very nostalgic. It will be very cool. I was a small child. 1985 is the year, and yes, I'm giving away all of my ages here, but 1985 was the year I graduated college. Oh. So that will be very nostalgic for me. And 2000 seems like yesterday, even though I know it was over 25 years ago. So, because I remember the Y2K, extravaganza and how terrified we all were that computers weren't going to work on January 2nd. So it reinvigorates great storytelling and moves it forward. Now, I do understand that with any Disney attraction, the moment you change it, the traditionalists go, yes, but we're going to lose all the blah, 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 blah. And I think that's valid. I understand that. But I think that if you're going to try to continue to engage audiences in storytelling that is relevant to them, if you do something that was originally designed to be nostalgic, you have to make sure that it doesn't become historic.
Yep. I agree with that. I think it's an interesting balance between this Carousel of Progress, which is in a way become its own, it's taken on its own separate identity as like a classic ride at Magic Kingdom. So it's almost has created its own IP where it's become this thing. And I think that's more what people are responding to. It's not like they're like, oh no, I won't get to see this thing that reminds me of my childhood. Like, no, it's more like they're responding to like, not the scenes themselves, but the ride itself has become nostalgic to their childhood. Like, I think it's more like that. But like, to your point, the goal of the ride is to evoke that nostalgia and then to inspire for a future. That's the original intent of the ride. So if you're going to stay true to the intent of the ride, you have to shift it. If you're going to stay true to like, this is an icon of the park, then you would leave it. But I think they're saying it's more important to keep Walt's vision for the ride than it is to keep it as
and I think that the reason it became an icon for the park is because when people first saw it, they understood the nostalgia of it.
That's right.
So by not allowing it to age forward, I think what you're doing is you're selfishly keeping that sense of iconography for the future away from a whole, two or three generations.
Yeah.
So you have to make certain that warm fuzzy that you got when you experienced Carousel of Progress the first time is something that is not so far distanced. And I do believe that people's understanding of time and culture has compressed. I think that, it used to be, even when you just look at the generations, when you look at boomers and Xers, and it's now so compressed that we're talking about generations that only last 3 to 5 years, as opposed to 30 to 50 years. So I think it's important to keep it moving forward. I think it's important to keep the intent of the ride the way Walt intended it to be. And I think it's also important for us to say that we are out of time and we look forward to seeing all you. We got through quite a bit though. We really crammed it in here. So I am proud of us, Philip. We did a nice job. So good job. On behalf of Philip Hernandez with Gantom Lighting and Controls and myself, Scott Swenson with Scott Swenson Creative Development, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30, and hopefully next week I'll be able to talk again. Bye.